Hi, welcome to another intimate conversation with Dr. Janis. I've got someone amazing here. I'm so impressed with this person. His smile, you can't see it, but his smile's getting bigger and bigger as I say this. It's Fredrick Zal, and the reason I am so impressed is because I brought him on as an expert in Tantric Sex. I want you all to hear, have all your questions answered, learn about it. What is it? But he's really the go-to guy on this. He has his own website, tantrickink.com, where you can even sign up for a personalized connection with him, which is very cool. But he's also very well trained. He's not just, somebody who decided to make it up themselves. Fredrick is the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, section co-leader for the state of Oregon. I have to say Oregon, right? Oregon. Yes, not Oregon. Oregon. Leader of the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexuality, BDSM Kink Special Interest Group, and former adjunct faculty at Lewis and Clark College's Graduate Department of Counseling. Very cool. Counseling, therapy, and school psychology. We'll get it all in. Fredrick also serves on the boards of the Northwest Institute on Intimacy and the Betty Dodson Foundation. And Fredrick's got a lot of cool stuff, which you can find out more about on that webpage, tantrickink.com. But let me just welcome him. Hello, Fredrick. Nice to have you here.
Hello, thank you. I am thrilled to be here, Dr. Janis.
Thank you. Well, you are going to enlighten us. I know a lot of us have maybe read in People magazine about Sting doing tantric sex or other celebrities. I think Sting does not want to be known for that. I think he probably prefers his music to speak for him, but
Probably, but being that I definitely had a crush on Sting,
I think we all did.
Sting's version of the Frankenstein movie is, in my opinion, one of the best.
Okay.
It might have been some subliminal planting of that seed for me. I'm not quite sure. Who knows?
Okay, it'll all come out in therapy, right? All come out in hypnosis or something. Yes, yes. So let's get to kind of the basics. What is tantric sex, and how's it different from kind of what we think are conventional? Well, that's weird to call too, but tell us what it is.
Yeah. Well, so there are a lot of buzzwords that are used, right? Tantra is a word that you might hear about or see in the movies or hear about through Sting.
in your dreams, yeah.
You also, you might hear about mindfulness. You might hear about sensate focus. You might hear about 50 other things, but all of them are really very simple. All of them are being in the present moment and having connection to your personal individual sensations, the way that you are sensing things, your sight, your hearing, your touch, where you're sensing those. And then second to that is the way you might engage another, and that could be another in a sexual intimate way, or it could be another in the way that you engage someone just walking down the street. Tantra isn't something that is just in the bedroom. Of course, it's fun and it's popularized that way. But Tantra, like many things that are coming from Southeast Asia, it is a way. It is a way of being. It is has been interpreted as a philosophy, and has been interpreted as a religion, and has been interpreted as a sexual practice. But it is a full way of being.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. So I'm assuming that it involves mindfulness, it involves connection, it involves awareness. We know a lot of
Yes.
times people get involved in sexual activities and they're not fully present, or even realize who they're with, just following an urge or whatever. So this makes it much more much more mindful and with intention, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so the question is, how would someone learn to do this? How does someone begin to do this?
Well, the first piece I think is patience and compassion for yourself. And that, yes, there might be some things that you'll just magically figure out in a millisecond, but there are also things that they could easily take you a decade. Even though you're practicing on a regular basis, it could take you an entire decade to understand it, so that your current ways of being need to not necessarily be unlearned as much as they need to melt and relax a little bit, so that you can create a connection to a slightly different way of being in what we call the world. And so, uh, all that said, doing it, that you can learn some really fun things in 15 minutes. So I think it's really great, and there are lots of sort of tricks of the trade, so to speak, that people can learn right away, and that people can start engaging in the practice, which can be really, really fun. And as I said, meaningful both in the bedroom and outside the bedroom.
So it's interesting because I think a lot of people have this vision, this view of tantric sex as being, you and your partner cross-legged, staring at each other and staring at each other and staring at each other, and looking at it and go, well, that's tantric. That's not what I do in my bedroom. But what I'm hearing from you is that tantric enhances every behavior that happens, every interaction with other humans.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's. So the example you just gave, this, people sitting loblum, which is cross-legged, sort of interwoven like a pretzel,
Right.
kind of a thing. So if you can imagine that, and people, as you were saying, sort of like staring into each other's eyes, and so the core of that is that you are gazing into someone's eyes. I often will recommend people, instead of trying to stare in both eyes, stare into one eye. It's just simpler. um, and the key is to relax. So if you think of just simple physiology, that the center of our vision is in color, the periphery of our vision is in grayscale, and our sense of movement is primarily detected in that grayscale, that peripheral vision. Our central vision is not so much about the movement. And the movement piece is that's what triggers fight and flight. It's what triggers anxiety. It's those things in your periphery, the periphery of your mind and the periphery of your vision, that trigger that anxiety. And so if you can central your vision and your mind to that area, and then relax, that central area, the physiology won't necessarily change. You don't suddenly digital work, you won't get more pixels, but but emotionally you become more focused there, and so it seems to expand, it seems to become wider, and it softens, and your body can start to relax, and your breath will start to slow, and your heart rate will start to decrease, and eventually you will actually start syncopating with the person that you're with, because your hearts are so close to each other. Potentially your hearts will start resonating off of each other, and you'll start getting an unconscious biofeedback by being in proximity to someone else's heartbeat, and your heartbeats will slowly, over a period of time, will start syncopating with each other as well. And so everything just starts to relax, which allows you to be in the present moment. And that's the key, is being in the present moment. Our one of the largest, so sexual mindfulness, and I always put forward Laurie Brado's work because I think they're spectacular. So Laurie Brado has been doing work around sexual mindfulness for decades, and their research, and it's been repeated by many others, show that there are quite a number of psychological and psychosomatic, so things that we believe to be physical conditions, but they're caused by the mind. That there's almost 24 conditions that are endemic in U.S. culture, that if people can be present and relax into the present moment, most of those either evaporate or become greatly lessened. And so the anxiety, the tension we feel of, oh, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to pay my taxes? Who's picking up the kids from daycare today? All those things that we worry about all the time, all those things create stress. It raises our blood pressure. It constricts our breathing. It it constricts all the pores of your skin, so you don't feel as much because all your skin is getting tighter. And so as you relax, you become more absorbent, you become more present and aware of all the things that are going around.
That's so interesting because first of all, we need that. Definitely our culture, and after going through worldwide COVID, still, still existing in our world where tension levels and a lot of stuff going on to worry about. Let me just
Hmm.
lay that out. So I can see this being not only, if we're talking about its use in the bedroom, not only a way to connect with someone and have that physical release of just the sexual action activities themselves, but what I'm hearing is this emotional release as well.
Yes,
So,
yes, definitely. And so we are holistic beings, right? Uh, we interpret with our brains. People will talk about feelings coming from the brain, but I will joke or quip that the brain doesn't feel. Like you could poke your brain and your brain would not feel it. Your brain interprets. Your body is what feels. And so that's one of the big things I try to work with my clients around is when you talk about feelings, that that is your body. What is your body, your literal physical body feeling? Sexuality, generally speaking, is about the body. It is about your body touching the world, and maybe that world includes another person or persons, but it is about the body. And the brain is one of many organs in the body. It does very important things, but it is interpreting what the body is feeling. And your gut, the enteric system of your gastrointestinal, your stomach, your intestines, so it thinks too. It has similar tissues to the brain. And so the butterflies in your stomach, the tightness in your stomach, that is also you interpreting and you feeling, having awareness of what is going on around you. And so please do pay attention to your brain, but also pay attention to your gut, but recognize you feel with your whole body and in that present moment.
that's interesting. That I think I'm glad you pointed out that kind of misunderstanding because a lot of us ignore what our body's telling us, and we just
Hmm.
focus on the intellectual way that we perceive something and not that gut feeling and what our body's trying to communicate to us. You mentioned that sometimes it could be with another person. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of jumping on that and understanding that the
Sure.
tantric perspective could be with self pleasuring. I mean, any
Yes, it can be.
it's like you said, whenever, wherever.
And so um, I think that this will fit what you're asking about, what we're talking about right now. And so there's this interesting thing for me, which I consider to be a misinterpretation of the original tantric uh, way of being, which has had quite a number of implications. And so there's this idea of a cycle of energy. And so you can just think of a pinwheel or something like that, just spinning around. That starts at the top, it goes to the left, it goes to the bottom, it comes up to the right, and it kind of just keeps spinning. So there's a cycle of energy. And so this cycle of energy, it can be within yourself. And so traditional Chinese medicine, if you have ever had acupuncture, acupressure, it's working with your chi, it's working with your energy flow. And so those are the cycles of energy in your body. And so your mouth is basically your lip above your mouth, your lip below your mouth. Those are sort of like the start and end points of cycles. If you want to think of there being you know, where do you start the thing? So it starts at your mouth. So your mouth and the nose region. And so these cycles of energy, they are in your individual body, but you can have a cycle of energy that goes between you and another person. And so, on a very simple way, just imagine that you're having a conversation with someone and you're talking with them. And when it's going well, there's a flow of conversation. You say something, the other person listens, then they say something, and you're listening when they're saying. And so, there's a giving and a receiving in that. And so, there for quite a while, and to the day, there still is this heteronormative understanding of Tantra, that this idea of uh, that there needs to be a penis and a vagina, that there needs to be that which penetrates another. And I fully believe that that is a misinterpretation of inhale and exhale. So, this idea of giving and receiving, that when you breathe in, you're breathing in air, you're receiving the air, and when you exhale, you're putting that air out. You're putting that back out in the universe. And then someone else, potentially, if they're inhaling and exhaling, they are also going to bring breath in and they're going to bring breath out. And if you're in a closed circuit, if we think, go back to this pinwheel and this spinning, not that you're necessarily like, breathing into each other's mouths, because you'll run out of oxygen pretty quick. But if you imagine this pinwheel, that you're basically, your energy is coming out and the other person is receiving, just like in that conversation. And that person is putting forward their energy and then you're receiving it. And so there's a cycle of energy. Um, to bring the body in, it's not just about the mouth, right? It's about this cycle of energy, which does have the origin at the lip nose area. Uh, but that's the top of the pinwheel, basically. The bottom of the pinwheel, essentially, is the genitals. And so this is part of why it's popularized in the sexuality side, is so the genitals are part of that pinwheel, potentially a very important and delightful part of the pinwheel, but it's just simply part of that cycle. It also, goes by your liver, it goes by your spleen, it goes by your lungs. But as it's going by your genitals, that's a way to have that connectivity. You could nuzzle lung to lung just as well as you can nuzzle genital to genital if you wanted to, and you're going to have this weaving of energy between people.
You're pointing out so many interesting things. First of all, I appreciate that you recognize that misinterpretation that it has to be, penis, vagina type of
Mm-hmm.
process, which opens it up to so many different variations of sexual realities and exploration and individuals, which I think is wonderful. The other thing you said, when you go lung to lung and all that, up until that point, I kept thinking, do you have to face to face? And now I'm getting that it could be anything as long as you create that connection. It could be any
you
position,
you could
truly.
you could do it, but you could, I mean, theoretically, we're doing it right now over the internet, right? We
Mm-hmm.
are connecting. And so you are talking and then I am talking, you are talking and I am talking. And so there's a book by Savatsky which I really love, and it's forgetting the whole title, but it's Tantric Celibacy. uh, there's a second edition. I personally prefer the first edition, but
Okay.
they're very similar. Um, but it talks about starting Tantra with yourself. That it starts with a celibate comprehension of your own energy. And then towards the end of the book, it does start talking about engaging with another person, but it actually starts about talking about engaging with another person at a distance. Someone being in another room of the house. Someone being, like, if you're in New York, maybe they're in Los Angeles, right? This person that you're connecting with, but you're not poking them in the nose with your finger, that you're energetically connecting with them. And you energetically connect with things all the time, and they can be fictional or real, right? If you watch a TV show and you get into one of the characters, you're connecting with that character even though it's fiction. If there are thoughts in your mind, whether they're real or not, you're connecting with those. And so as you're connecting with things, some things you can have conscious choice around, some is unconscious. Theoretically, you could work the unconscious up to the conscious, but you make these choices in what you connect with and how you connect with them and how important you consider those connections. And at different points of the day, different times of the week, you're going to need different things, just like we need different nutrients, right? We need our different food groups. And so sometimes you might need someone to stroke your hair. Sometimes you might need someone to tickle your ear. Sometimes you might need a foot massage. Sometimes you might want, like, earth-shattering, body-exploding, genital-based sex. There are many different things that we potentially might need and want and ways to connect. And they're all wonderful. And just being aware of your present moment for what you need and want, what you have to offer, and then saying, hey, to other person, what do you need? What do you want? And what do you have to offer? Not next week, but right now.
So that's the communication piece that enhances everything, which I love.
Yes.
First, I have to say, you explained one of the mysteries that I've observed since I was very young. I remember sitting in a movie theater before the movie started, lights are on, and I noticed that if I stared at the back of someone's head, they would turn around.
That's a,
Never fail.
that's
Never
definitely very,
fail. I've done it in
yeah.
concerts. I've done it even as I grew older because it became almost a fun thing to do for me just to see if
Yep.
it kept working. But now it makes sense because I'm connecting energetically with them and they're going, what's that? Hey, what's that behind me? So they note it. So I get when you say you can connect with someone near, far, the type of thing where if you think of someone, then all of a sudden they call or you get an email from them, that kind of connection too. Yeah, I see your eyes going, yep, yep.
Yep. Yep.
But this, I have to say that this discussion we're having is taking me in a way that I didn't expect because the notion I think that a lot of people have of tantric sex are positions and setting aside a time and doing tantric sex, which is so different from what we call vanilla sex or conventional sex or just sex where you're just, hurry, we have 7 minutes, let's hurry, fit it in before the kids wake up. Something like that, just being more connected and paying closer attention. But what I'm hearing from you is really life changing and a life changing perspective. I love the fact that it could lower anxiety, and we're all looking for ways to lower anxiety. So you mentioned that as one. Oh, I'm sorry, you're about to say something.
Oh, well, so one of the things that you mentioned, which you kind of said it in a joking way, but I think it's a great opportunity, right? You talked about the like, oh, we only have 6 minutes till the kids wake up. I'm like, awesome, you have 6 minutes until the kids wake up. Like that's amazing. Like you can experience a lifetime in 6 minutes. And so like, how can you just revel in that most sumptuous possibility of those 6 minutes? The a practice which I give to all my clients and I personally try myself as well, is if you've been away from your the people meaningful in your life, whether it's your kids or your spouse or whoever that person or persons are, is the moment that you come together, if at all possible, maybe there's a fire going on and you got to take care of that. But generally speaking, if it's possible, just 30 seconds, pause. If you can't do 30 seconds, 10 seconds, just pause, whether that's just to look each other for 10 seconds, whether that's to kiss for 10 seconds, whether that's to hug for 10 seconds or 30 seconds, just pause for just a little blip out of your day, just to honor that moment of reconnection. And it's a teeny thing, it's just a little 10 seconds out of your day. But acknowledging that creates a new pattern in life. And it basically starts telling your partner all the other stuff, it's real and I'm an adult and so I need to take care of all that stuff, but you are a priority, you are important, and I recognize you, I see you, I feel you, and I care about you. And for this 10 seconds, I'm not going to worry about the taxes, I'm not going to worry about that I need to take the garbage out in five minutes from now. Just for 10 seconds I'm going to connect with you. And if you got 6 minutes before the kids wake up,
You're right.
wow, that's an amazing amount of time.
You're right, right.
And
You're talking about 10 seconds making a difference. You're
yeah,
right. 6 minutes is a life,
yeah.
almost an eternity.
And the other piece of that potentially is, when we think of pleasure differential or orgasm achievement, I'm doing air quotes here.
Yeah.
Um, and so something which I will often talk about, which people often don't like, is that an orgasm, I'm sorry to say, is basically a sneeze. It is your body releasing stress. It feels awesome. It's amazing. I love orgasms. They're incredible. However, physiologically, it's simply a sneeze. And we don't pay hundreds of dollars. Well, once upon a time, people used to do snuff, but nowadays we don't particularly pay hundreds of dollars to figure out how to sneeze more. Um, and so we're always chasing the orgasm. And so in 6 minutes, often people say yes, a male identified body person, they can have an orgasm in 6 minutes, no problem. And some female-bodied people might or might not have an orgasm in 6 minutes. But that, if you use that as your meter, as your measuring stick of is an orgasm happening or not, the one or both partners might be very disappointed in that 6 minutes. But if you can be like, wow, how many square inches of flesh can I feel and experience and explore in 6 minutes? How many sensations, scent, sight, touch, taste, how many sensations can I experience in 6 minutes? Like, when you're eating food, do you chew a mouthful for 6 minutes? No. You enjoy your food in 5 seconds or less with every mouthful. And so in 6 minutes, there's so much you could explore. So, I mean, it's kind of it's a silly thing, but it's, to me, that's the thing is, yes, eventually you can change everything. And yes, you could go to the gym for 8 hours a day if you, by some miracle, had that amount of time and the luxury of that. But most of us, we're busy. And so how can you find 6 minutes out of your day? Or how can you just find 10 seconds out of your day as a starting place? And then maybe you do your 10 seconds and then you take out the garbage and you do your things, you take care of the kids and what have you. And then you find a minute and a half. And then you find another minute and a half. And then eventually you find 20 minutes. And maybe you find a half an hour. And you start changing the pattern of your life. You start changing the priorities in your life. And you start scheduling, which I do believe in date night. I do believe in like scheduling date night for the anticipation, all the excitement of that, and creating the priority to make sure it's in your schedule so you don't plan other things. But the tricky part of that is when you make plans for date night, I would recommend put forward a general intention and the time, and have rigidity somewhat around that time. Like, you're not going to schedule other things into that, but don't be rigid about what you're going to do. If you plan on going out for Thai food and you both are like, I want Italian, then go for Italian. Don't go for Thai. If you're dating like, oh, we're going to have all this sex and we're going to try these 50 positions and we're going to swing from monkey bars and awesome. But if one of you throws out your back, acknowledge that and express your care and love for each other in whatever way in the moment you want to do in this sacred date night time that you've been planning for a week or a month or 2 days, however your schedule works.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's something doable. Just in this brief few sentences, you've given us so many different things to try. What about compromising? What about doing for or on behalf of the person you care about? You're not so interested, but they want. So you're willing to acquiesce. Where does that come in? How does that work?
I have a range of feelings on that. So big picture, I'm a huge advocate for consent. I taught for the Consent Academy for 3 years. That's consent.academy, not .com. I still love that nonprofit, and I still send people there all the time for training. So I'm a huge advocate of consent. I'm personally not an advocate so much for compromise, because often compromise means both people are not getting what they want. And so holistic, so big picture compromise, yes. So you love Italian food and I love Thai food, theoretically, let's just say. And so some nights we'll go for Italian, some nights we'll go for Thai. And I mean, I still recognize that there's nutrition in both foods. And so I might not have a preference for your food choice, but I still am getting something out of it, sharing time with you, and I'm enjoying some of the flavors, and potentially there are options on the menu that I can pick. And so there's, I don't know, I'll start going too far in this metaphor.
Does that mean you're getting hungry? Is that what's happening?
Well, perhaps. But let's talk about sex and
and
food.
time
See.
for sex and food.
Um,
Now
but
I think it's a Seinfeld episode. Yeah, go ahead. Wasn't that the one where he has sex? George has sex, and on the side he has a corned beef sandwich. Did you ever see that one? And so while he's pleasuring this woman, and she's oohing and eyeing, he's reaching to the side and grabbing a bite of his corned beef sandwich.
Well, I must say that I think one of my sexual highlight moments did actually involve short ribs. They're really good short ribs. And the other things going on at the time were pretty amazing as well, and so they just accentuated each other beautifully.
Yeah, okay.
It was a lovely pairing.
Lovely pairing, like wine.
But oh my goodness, I'm thinking of her face, but I can't think of her name right now. Mating in Captivity.
Oh, that's oh yeah, yes. By the way, the book title is Mating in Captivity. Just look it up. No other book.
I can't think of her this very moment.
She's Belgian. I know who she is.
One of the things that she talks about, which also like the Gottman folks, like there's a whole lot of folks that talk about that you need to stick the most thriving long-term relationships are based on being genuine to what you want and communicating that. This doesn't mean you're always going to get what you want. And, you might get what you want on Monday and someone else is going to get what they want on Tuesday. But instead of always doing what the other person wants or some middle ground, which means no one's ever getting what they want, is to stay essentially altruistically selfish. And so if you're selfish and you get what you need and want, you're going to have more energy, more enthusiasm to then give and help others. And if you don't get what you need and want, your capacities will become diminished. You're going to become more upset, miserable, frustrated, and then you're going to close down and you're not going to be giving to others. And so, yes, I believe in consent. Yes, I believe in holistic relationships, but being genuine and not acquiescing, as you were mentioning a moment, not acquiescing continually. I generally tell people that 85% of what you do, so it's not a 50-50 compromise, 85% of what you do needs to be something that you would love to do. 15%, I think people, if they're doing the thing that the other person wants, 15%, people can get along with that. Yeah. More than 50%. When it gets to 20%, it starts festering a little bit. You start getting a little irritated. And then if it actually gets to the 50%, which is a lovely mathematical idea, you're miserable half of your life potentially. And that's not healthy. That's not holistic. That's not sustainable. But there needs to be a balance. And there needs to be differentiation. When you met your other person, they were themselves. They were an individual, and you were. And it's the learning about each other, exploring. Esther Perel.
Yes, I was just gonna. I looked her up. Yeah, Esther
One of the things Esther Perel talks about.
This episode is sponsored by Esther Perel. Yeah. Like Sesame Street.
I will recommend books all the time, and I love Esther Perel's book.
No, books. Yeah, no, it is. Her book's wonderful. Anyway, but I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying but what you said back to the Italian food or Thai food. If it's not the food that you like you said, think about what about it you do like. What about it does do something for you? Yes. You don't want Thai food. You don't want whatever the choice is, but you want the nutrition, you want the time together, so you don't go to the meal with your arms crossed and you're like, well, okay, I guess it's your night to pick your meal. And that helps you stay away from that raw, that bad balance, I guess.
Yeah, and I think being honest and genuine in your intentions. So it's one of my practices that I've been doing for decades now is, like, if I'm making plans with a friend or with a lover, there's always like, oh, do you want to go to the movies? Do you want to do whatever the thing is? I'm like, I want to spend time with you. We could go to the movies. We could do Italian food. We could do anything. My intention, my goal is to spend time with you. However, there are certain times where I'm like, no, I want to see the new exhibit at the museum. And I love you, and I'm hoping that you're going to want to go with me, but I want to see that exhibit. And we can differentiate. The other person can be like, I know you're excited about this exhibit. I don't like Dadaism. I have no interest to see that exhibit at the museum. You go on your own, and you can tell me about it because you're probably going to be pretty excited when you get home.
Oh, okay.
But I don't want to go, and that's cool, right? We can differentiate, and that's how remain fascinating to each other. That's how we remain new to each other. Is sometimes being like, we don't have to do everything together. Sometimes I'm going to do things on my own. Sometimes you're going to do things on your own. Sometimes, I mean, if you really want Italian, and I really want Thai food, then go to a place that has a cart pod, that has an Italian food truck and a Thai food truck. Get your separate foods, but eat at the same table, or
Yeah.
get takeout from the two places and bring them back home. Right? How important is your differentiation in the moment, and make choices around that so you remain joyful.
So many great things. I was going to ask you about one of the most famous things that people talk about with tantric sex, but I think you've really touched on it without being directly on it, and that's the whole idea of not focusing on the orgasm and the ejaculation. And you've really talked about that already, and trying to enjoy it and let that be the sneeze instead of the main focus. And what I love is if you don't ejaculate, if you don't have the orgasm, if you're doing engaging in a tantric relationship during sex,
Mm-hmm.
then your evening wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
Where we know a lot of people feel if they don't, hit that home run or
Sure.
touchdown, then wasted time, wasted space.
Yeah.
So
I think another important thing that we can learn from Tantra, and so I love the work of Virginia Johnson and William Masters. Um, However, their work confused ejaculation and orgasm, and they're very, very different things. And so uh, the refractory period, the period between one ejaculation and the next, yes, that definitely is a duration of time. The time between one orgasm and the next, that can be a millisecond, that could be 10 weeks. And so to be able to recognize the difference between those two, and that one can ejaculate without having orgasm, one can orgasm without ejaculating. And so uh, to separate those two is tricky, because the the conflation of those two, the understanding that those are woven together, is so integral in not just American society, in many societies, um, that it takes practice. Like, that's one of those pieces that really, truly, it could take a decade. It's a very, very simple thing. And so I'll give two visualizations, two metaphors that potentially can help. If you get it in a millisecond, yay, go you.
or in six
I know
minutes.
for me personally,
Yeah.
I think it probably took me probably 6 years to like
Okay.
get to a place of familiarity with it. And it took me 10 to 12 years until I got to a place of confidence, and a place where, not that I took it for granted, but I recognize it as a potential natural state for me. And so um, this is something that can be explored for both a male and female body, but it is talked about with male bodies. And so if you've ever balanced on a chair, that there's this balancing point, that if you go a little bit too far back, you're going to fall over; a little too far forward, you're back on the ground. And so it's that balancing point. It's the excitement of the moment, balancing in that excitement without tipping over. And so there's this term called edging, which is based on this idea of like being on the edge of a precipice, not falling over the edge. So for me personally, the visualization that I used for a very, very long time was balancing on a chair. And I visualized that in my mind when I was trying to not ejaculate and continue in the pleasure of the moment, continuing to let the waves of excitement, the waves of energy cascade over me, just like waves crashing over me at the ocean, and enjoy that without ejaculating. I eventually came up with another visualization, which I think helps quite a bit. So if you imagine a river or a stream, a body of water that's rushing by, and you're standing in that river, that water is rushing by. It is really true. It's a real thing. It's genuine, whether that's the chaos of your life or it's all the sensations you're feeling in the sexual moment. So there's a lot that's going by you. There's a lot that you're feeling. But you don't have to be caught up in it. You don't have to go downstream with it. You can stay planted, keep your feet planted on those rocks, and let the water pass by you. And so I try to recommend when people imagine themselves being a flamingo, because flamingos have these itty bitty skinny legs. And so the water can rush by, but there's not a lot of surface area on the legs. And they have these really big talons, so they can hold the rocks really well with the water rushing by, and they won't get caught up in that water. They won't get caught up in that chaos. And so those are two different visualizations that might be able to help you. If you get it in a millisecond, yay. But really, truly, I would recommend to be compassionate with yourself, be patient, and if you're with a masturbatory or a partnered sexuality, even if you're 3 times a week, it's something. It could easily take you 2 years, easily. I mean, some people, yeah, it will take a millisecond. They're like, oh, I get it, no problem.
Wow.
But that's a little bit more rare.
Well, I think this is a great thing to end on with the visual of flamingos. I like flamingos. We'll just let's see. We've got through a lot. Fredrick, you've been incredibly informative today. You've covered a lot of things. You've given a lot of tips. I want people. They can contact you, can't they, through that website?
TantricKink.com, TantrickKink, all squished together with a .com on the end.
Okay, and I know they can make appointments with you. It could be in person, it could be virtual, and you can be their guide for, what did you say, the next 12 years as they try to work on some of these goals. But they could find out a lot more information about you and a lot of the things that, a lot of lessons that you share, which are just amazing. And I'm really honored to be able to say that I know you. And I'm so glad that you were able to come and join us today and share. I can't think of anyone better to introduce Tantric Sex to everyone. And now we're gonna all go have Thai food, right? That's what we're all.
You can have Thai. I'm gonna go have a Thai.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for an intimate conversation. Thank you.